The boy threw himself in front of the stretcher, arms spread wide, blocking the British soldiers from taking his brother away. "Please don't take him, please! He's all I have left!" The soldiers stopped. The boy couldn't have been more than 11 years old. His face was streaked with tears and dirt. Behind him, on a makeshift stretcher of blankets and sticks, lay another boy, maybe 14, burning with fever, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It was May the 3rd, 1945. The war in Europe would end in 5 days. And in a bombed-out cellar in Hamburg, Corporal David Ashford was facing a choice that would define the rest of his life. The dying boy on the stretcher was German. The British field hospital was for Allied soldiers only. The medicine that could save him was desperately needed for British wounded. Every rule, every regulation, every reasonable calculation said to walk away. "Please," the younger boy whispered. "He's my brother. He's all I have." What Corporal Ashford did next would change the lives of 2 German orphans and teach everyone who witnessed it that mercy doesn't ask what country you're from. If this story moves you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more untold stories from World War II. These accounts deserve to be remembered. David Ashford was born in 1922 in a small village called Thornbury, just outside Bristol. His father was the village doctor, the only one within 15 miles, and David had grown up watching him make house calls at all hours, treating anyone who needed help regardless of their ability to pay. "Medicine doesn't care about money," his father would say. "It doesn't care about politics or grudges or who owes what to whom. When someone is sick, you help them. That's the only rule that matters." David had planned to follow in his father's footsteps. He was halfway through medical school when the war started, close enough to graduation that the army assigned him to the Royal Army Medical Corps rather than the infantry. He spent 5 years as a medic, North Africa, Italy, Normandy, the push into Germany, treating wounds that would have made him faint in his first year of medical school. By May 1945, he had seen everything. Men blown apart by shells. Men burned beyond recognition. Men dying slowly from infections that should have been treatable if only there were enough supplies, enough time, enough hands. He had also seen the limits of compassion. The rules were clear. British medical supplies were for British soldiers first, then Allied wounded, then German military prisoners if resources permitted. German civilians were the responsibility of German medical services, what remained of them after the collapse. The rules made sense. Resources were limited. British boys were dying. You couldn't save everyone, so you saved your own first. David understood the rules. He followed them. He had to. But on May 3rd, 1945, in the ruins of Hamburg, the rules collided with something stronger. The cellar was in the basement of what had once been an apartment building. Allied bombing had reduced the structure to rubble, but the cellar remained intact, a dark, cramped space that had become shelter for the desperate. David's unit was clearing buildings, looking for German military holdouts and documenting civilian casualties. They found neither in the cellar. What they found instead was 2 boys and a small fire made from broken furniture. The older boy was unconscious, lying on a pile of rags, shaking with fever. Even from a distance, David could hear the wet rattle in his lungs. Pneumonia, most likely, the kind that killed quickly without antibiotics. The younger boy, the one who would throw himself in front of the stretcher, was trying to drip water into his brother's mouth. He looked up when the British soldiers entered, and his face went white with terror. "Please," he said in broken English, "please not hurt us. We are not soldiers, just children. Please." David held up his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. "We're not going to hurt you," he said. "I'm a medic. I can help." The boy's expression changed from terror to desperate hope. "Help? You help my brother? He is very sick. Very sick. Please, you help." David knelt beside the older boy and examined him quickly. High fever, laboured breathing, crackling sounds in the lungs. Without penicillin, He would be dead within days, possibly hours. He needs medicine, David said. Antibiotics. I don't have them here. Medicine? Where? Where is medicine? At our field hospital. But… David stopped. How did you explain triage to an 11-year-old? How did you tell a child that his brother would die because the rules said German civilians didn't get British penicillin? The younger boy seemed to understand anyway. His face crumpled. Please, please take him. Please give medicine. He is my brother. He is all I have. David's commanding officer was Captain James Morrison, a decent man, but one who believed in following orders. Absolutely not, Morrison said, when David explained the situation. German civilians are not our responsibility. We barely have enough penicillin for our own wounded. He's 14 years old, sir. He'll die without treatment. And British soldiers will die if we use our supplies on German children. That's not a choice I'm willing to make. With respect, sir, I'm not asking you to make it. I'm asking for permission to use my personal allocation. Every medic in the unit received a small personal supply of medications, antibiotics, morphine, bandages, to use at their discretion in emergencies. It was theirs to allocate as they saw fit. Morrison's jaw tightened. You want to use your allocation on a German? I want to use it on a dying child. He's the enemy. He's 14 years old. He's never fired a weapon in his life. He's not my enemy. He's just a sick boy who needs medicine. Morrison was silent for a long moment. If you do this, he finally said, you'll have nothing left for actual emergencies, British emergencies. I understand, sir. And if one of our boys dies because you wasted your supplies on a German, then I'll have to live with that. But I'll also have to live with myself if I let a child die when I could have saved him. Morrison stared at him. Your father was a doctor, wasn't he? Yes, sir. Is that where you get this bloody-minded sense of medical ethics? He taught me that medicine doesn't care about politics. When someone is sick, you help them. That's the only rule. Morrison rubbed his face with one hand. Go, he said. But if this comes back to bite us, it's on your head. Understood, sir. Thank you. David returned to the cellar with his medical kit. The younger boy, his name, David learned, was Heinrich, had been crying. The older boy, Friedrich, hadn't moved. His breathing had grown worse in the hour David had been gone. I brought medicine, David said. It should help. Heinrich stared at him. You help? Really? I'm going to try. David prepared the injection. Penicillin was precious, more valuable than gold in the chaos of post-war Germany, and he was using most of his personal supply on a single patient. If any of his own unit members needed antibiotics in the next few weeks, he would have nothing to offer. He administered the injection carefully, then checked Friedrich's vital signs again. Still critical, but the medicine would take time to work. I need to come back, David told Heinrich. Several times. The medicine only works if I give it to him regularly. You come back. Promise? I promise. Heinrich's face crumpled again, but this time with relief instead of despair. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you, English soldier. Thank you. David returned to the cellar 4 times over the next 3 days. Each time, he brought more than medicine. He brought food from his own rations, bread, tinned meat, chocolate. He brought blankets from supply stores that wouldn't miss them. He brought clean water and bandages and everything he could spare. Friedrich's fever broke on the 2nd day. By the 3rd day, he was conscious, weak but alive, looking at David with the same mixture of confusion and gratitude that his brother had shown. Why? Friedrich asked. His English was better than Heinrich's. He had learned it in school before the war made such things dangerous. Why do you help us? Because you were sick. But I am German. We are enemies. You're 14 years old. You're not my enemy. Friedrich was quiet for a moment. My father was a soldier, he said. He died in Russia. My mother died in the bombing 2 months ago. Heinrich and we have no one. I know. When the British came, we thought you would kill us, or take us to a camp. We were told the English were cruel, that you had no mercy. David looked at this German boy, this child of the enemy, who had expected death and received medicine instead. Some of us are cruel, David said honestly. Some of us aren't. Same as any people, anywhere. But I'm a medic. My job is to help people who are sick. It doesn't matter what flag they were born under. Friedrich's eyes filled with tears. My father was a doctor too, he whispered. Before the war, he said the same thing. On the 5th day, the war officially ended. Germany surrendered. The fighting stopped. The occupation began. David should have moved on. His unit was being reassigned, sent to help with the massive task of processing displaced persons and managing the chaos of defeat. The cellar and its 2 occupants should have become just another memory from 5 years of war. But David couldn't leave them. Heinrich and Friedrich were orphans in a destroyed city, with no family, no home, no future. The occupation authorities were overwhelmed. Millions of displaced persons, millions of refugees, not nearly enough resources to help them all. 2 German boys could easily disappear into the chaos, starve in the ruins, die of the next illness that came along. David started visiting them every day. He brought food, medicine, whatever supplies he could scrounge. He helped them find better shelter, an intact room in a damaged building with walls and a roof and something resembling a door. His fellow soldiers noticed. "You're spending all your free time with those German kids," Private Thompson observed one evening. "Why?" "Because someone has to." "But why you? You saved the older one's life. You've done enough." David thought about how to explain. "My father used to say that saving a life isn't a single act," he said. "It's a commitment. When you save someone, you become responsible for them. You can't just walk away and assume they'll be fine. That's a lot of responsibility." "Yes, it is." Thompson was quiet for a moment. "You're going to try to help them, aren't you? Really help them, not just food and medicine, something permanent." "I'm going to try." "How?" David didn't have an answer. He only knew that he couldn't leave these boys behind. That something had happened in that cellar, something that bound them together in ways he couldn't explain. The answer came 3 months later, when David received his discharge papers. The war was over. He was going home. He could finish his medical degree, become the doctor he had always wanted to be, live the life that 5 years of war had interrupted. But Heinrich and Friedrich would stay behind, in a destroyed country, with nothing, unless David did something impossible. He wrote to his father first, explained everything, the cellar, the medicine, the boys he had saved and couldn't abandon. Asked if there was any way, any possibility of bringing them to England. His father's reply came 3 weeks later. "My son, you have done what I always taught you to do. You have healed without asking permission, cared without counting cost. I am proud of you. As for the boys, there are programs. Difficult, complicated, but possible. Children displaced by the war can sometimes be brought to Britain if sponsors can be found, if paperwork can be navigated. I will sponsor them. Your mother and I will take them in. We have room in the house and love to spare. Bring them home, David. Finish what you started." The bureaucracy was nightmarish. Germany was under occupation, divided into zones controlled by different Allied powers. Moving German children to Britain required permissions from military authorities, occupation administrators, refugee agencies, and the British Home Office. Each organisation had its own forms, its own requirements, its own timeline. David spent 4 months fighting through the paperwork. He called in every favour he had accumulated over 5 years of war. He wrote letters to everyone who might be able to help: officers, chaplains, relief workers, politicians. Heinrich and Friedrich waited in Hamburg. not knowing if they would ever see David again, not knowing if the promise he had made would be kept. But David was his father's son. He didn't give up. In February 1946, nearly a year after he had first found them in that cellar, David Ashford walked Heinrich and Friedrich through customs at Dover. They were going home. Heinrich and Friedrich Müller grew up in Thornbury, in the house where David had grown up. They took the surname Ashford when David's parents legally adopted them, a complicated process that took another 2 years of paperwork but was never in doubt. Heinrich became a nurse. Friedrich became a doctor, like David's father. Both of them spent their careers in medicine, healing others the way they had been healed. "Why did you do it?" Heinrich asked David once, years later, when they were both adults and could talk about those days without the emotions overwhelming them. "You risked your career. You used supplies that could have saved British soldiers. You spent a year fighting bureaucrats to bring us to England." "Why?" David thought about his father's teachings, about the cellar in Hamburg, about a boy throwing himself in front of a stretcher crying, "Please don't take my brother." "Because medicine doesn't care about flags," he said, "and because when you save a life, you become responsible for it. I couldn't save Friedrich and then walk away. That's not how healing works." "But we were German. We were the enemy." "You were children. You were sick and alone and terrified. That's all I saw. That's all that mattered." Heinrich was quiet for a long time. "You know what I remember most about that day?" he finally said. "Not the medicine, not even Friedrich getting better. I remember you coming back. You said you would, and I didn't believe you. Why would a British soldier keep a promise to German children? But you came back. 4 times. And every time you walked through that cellar door, I believed a little more that the world might not be as terrible as I thought." David didn't know what to say. "That's what you gave us," Heinrich continued. "Not just medicine. Hope. The proof that kindness exists. The evidence that enemies can choose to heal instead of hurt. I just did what my father taught me." "Then your father taught you well." Dr. David Ashford died in 1995, at the age of 73. He had spent his entire career as a village doctor, like his father before him, making house calls at all hours, treating anyone who needed help, never asking if they could pay. Heinrich and Friedrich were at his bedside. They were both in their 60s now, doctors themselves, fathers and grandfathers, men who had built lives from the ashes of the war that should have killed them. "Thank you," Friedrich whispered, holding David's hand. "For everything. You've thanked me 1,000 times, and I'll thank you 1,000 more." David smiled weakly. "Just pass it on. That's all the thanks I need. When you see someone who's sick, help them. When you see someone who's alone, reach out. Don't ask what country they're from. Don't ask if they deserve it. Just help. We will. We always have. We always will." "Good." David closed his eyes. "Then I can rest." The brothers carried David's words forward for the rest of their lives. Friedrich worked in refugee medicine for 30 years, treating displaced people from a dozen conflicts. Heinrich founded a clinic in Bristol that served immigrants and refugees, never turning anyone away regardless of their status. They told their children about David, about the cellar in Hamburg, about the medicine that saved Friedrich's life, and the promise that saved both their futures. "This is what it means to be a doctor," Friedrich would say. "Not the degree, not the white coat. This," he would touch his chest, "is what it means. The willingness to help anyone who needs it. The understanding that medicine doesn't care about borders." In 2005, on the 60th anniversary of the war's end, Heinrich and Friedrich travelled to Hamburg together. They found the site of the cellar, now a modern apartment building, all traces of the war erased. They stood on the street where their lives had been saved and remembered. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if David hadn't come," Heinrich said, "if he had followed the rules. If he had saved his medicine for British soldiers instead of wasting it on German children. We would have died." Yes, and no one would ever have known. 2 more children lost in the chaos, 2 more numbers in the millions of casualties. But he didn't follow the rules. No, he followed something more important. They stood in silence for a moment. I still have the letter, Friedrich said quietly, the one his father wrote, about bringing us home. What does it say? Friedrich pulled out a worn piece of paper, carefully preserved in plastic. Bring them home, David. Finish what you started. He looked at his brother. That's what he did. He started something, saving my life. And then he finished it. He didn't stop halfway. He didn't save me, and then abandon us to whatever fate would bring. He committed completely. That's what healing means. Yes, that's what it means. The Ashford Medical Clinic in Bristol still operates today. Founded by Heinrich Ashford in 1975, it has treated hundreds of thousands of patients over nearly 50 years. It has never turned anyone away. It has never asked about immigration status or ability to pay. On the wall of the waiting room hangs a photograph of David Ashford, along with a plaque that reads, "In memory of Dr. David Ashford, who taught us that medicine doesn't care about borders. May 3rd, 1945. Please don't take my brother. I'll bring medicine instead." Below the photograph is a glass case containing David's original medical kit, the same one he carried into a Hamburg cellar in May 1945, the same one that held the penicillin that saved Friedrich's life. New doctors at the clinic are told the story on their first day. They are told about the cellar, the medicine, the brothers who were saved. They are told about the commitment that healing requires. Not just treating a patient once, but seeing it through to the end. This is our legacy, they are told. This is what we stand for. When someone is sick, we help them. When someone is alone, we reach out. We don't ask what country they're from. We don't ask if they deserve it. We just help. This is a story that needed to be told. If it impacted you, please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel for more true accounts from World War II. These stories, though buried in time, still speak to us today about the power of mercy, the meaning of commitment, and the truth that healing doesn't stop at borders. It starts with the choice to help.